Shalom, welcome to part two. We just got through reading Daniel chapter 2, and now we're starting at Daniel chapter 3. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. King Nebuchadnezzar made a golden statue whose height was 60 cubits, and whose width was 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent for the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to assemble and to come to the dedication of the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces assembled for the dedication of the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. When they were standing before the statue that Nebuchadnezzar had set up, the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, an entire musical ensemble, you are to fall down and worship the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire." Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, an entire musical ensemble, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Verse 8. Accordingly, at this time, certain Chaldeans came forward and denounced the Yahweh. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, an entire musical ensemble shall fall down and worship the golden statue, and whoever does not fall down and worship shall be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. There a certain Yahweh, whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these pay no heed to you, O king. They do not serve your gods, and do not worship the golden statue that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought in. So they brought those men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods, and you do not worship the golden statue that I have set up? Now if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, an entire musical ensemble, to fall down and worship the statue that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands?" Verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to present a..." Let me start over. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to present a defense to you in this matter. If our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire and out of your hand, O king, let him deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, and we will not worship the golden statue that you have set up." Okay. Verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was so filled with rage against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face was distorted. He ordered the furnace heated up 7 times more than was customary, and ordered some of the strongest guards in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So the men were bound still wearing their tunics, their trousers, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. Because the king's command was urgent and the furnace was so overheated, the raging flames killed the men who lifted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But the three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound, into the furnace of blazing fire. Verse 24. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up quickly. He said to his counselors, Was it not three men that we threw bound into the fire? They answered the king, True, O king. He replied, But I see four men unbound, walking in the middle of the fire, and they were not hurt. And the fourth has the appearance of a god. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of blazing fire and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads were not singed, their tunics were not harmed, and not even the smell of fire came from them. Nebuchadnezzar said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. Before I keep reading, this was not JC either. Okay. They disobeyed the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own. Any god, including JC, except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language that utters blasphemy against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Chapter 4. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all peoples, nations, and languages that live throughout the earth, may you have abundant prosperity. The signs and wonders that the Most High God has worked for me, I am pleased to recount. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdoms is an everlasting kingdom, and his sovereignty is from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living at ease in my home and prospering in my palace. I saw a dream that frightened me. My fantasies in bed and the visions of my head terrified me, so I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me in order that they might tell me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the diviners came in, and I told them the dream, but they could not tell me its interpretation. At last, Daniel came in before me, he who was named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and who is endowed with a spirit of the holy gods. And I told him the dream. O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, I know that you are endowed with a spirit of the holy gods, and that no mystery is too difficult for you. Hear the dream that I saw. Tell me its interpretation. All right. That's the reason why it's important to know the names of Shadrach, not the real names of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which was Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and Daniel, because they were named after their own gods. Okay, now this was the dream that was going to be described. This time around, King Nebuchadnezzar doesn't force anyone to not only tell the interpretation of the dream, but also he doesn't force people to or anyone to give the dream itself that took place. He goes ahead and explains the dream in the second time, the second scenario. Verse 10. Upon my bed, this is what I saw. There was a tree at the center of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew great and strong. Its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the ends of the whole earth. Its foliage was beautiful, its fruit abundant, and it provided food for all. The animals of the field found shade under it. The birds of the air nested in its branches, and from it all living beings were fed. I continued looking in the visions of my head as I laid in bed, and there was a holy watcher coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said, "Cut down the tree and chop off its branches, strip off its foliage and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from beneath it, and let the animals flee from beneath it, and the birds from its branches, but leave its stump and roots in the ground." Okay? Leave its stump and roots in the ground with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field. Let him be bathed with the dew of heaven, and let his lot be with the animals of the field. In the grass of the earth, let his mind be changed from that of a human, and let the mind of an animal be given to him. So we're going to go ahead and uncover a small mystery with the band of iron and bronze. If you would turn to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 19. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 19, it says, and these are the curses, by the way. It says, "I will break the pride of your might. I will make your heaven like iron, and your land like copper." Let me read that again. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 19. "I will break the pride of your might. I will make your heaven like iron, and your land like copper." Okay? Iron represents hardness, and copper represents uncleanliness. It represents harlotry. The word, if I'm not mistaken, for copper is nakashat. Nakashat means bronze, copper, lust, harlotry, dubious, not to be relied upon, unreliable, filthiness, brazen, base metal, impure. It also has, hold on one second. Ignoble, unworthy, vile. It means divination, enchantment, also known as witchcraft. So here's kind of like a well digging with Daniel chapter 4, verse 15. And I'm going to go ahead and read it again just for edification purposes, for clarification. It says, "But leave its stump and roots in the ground with a band of iron and bronze, which is nakashat. In the tender grass of the field, let him be bathed with the dew of heaven, and let his lot be with the animals of the field in the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a human, and let the mind of an animal be given to him. Okay? And let 7 times pass over him. The sentence is rendered by decree of the watchers. The decision is given by order of the holy ones, in order that all who live may know that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of mortals. He gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of human beings. Verse 18. This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw. Now you, Belteshazzar, declare the interpretation, since all the wise men of my kingdom are unable to tell me the interpretation. You are able, however, for you are endowed with a spirit of the holy gods. Verse 19. Then Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar, was severely distressed for a while. His thoughts terrified him. The king said, Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or the interpretation terrify you. Belteshazzar answered, My lord, may the dream for those who hate My lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation for your enemies. The tree that you saw, which grew great and strong, so that its top reached to heaven, and was visible to the end of the whole earth, whose foliage was beautiful and its fruit abundant, which provided food for all, under which animals of the field lived, and whose branches the birds of the air had nested. It is you, O king. You have grown great and strong. So he's revealing to King Nebuchadnezzar that he is the tree here in this dream. Your greatness has increased and reaches the heaven, and your sovereignty to the ends of the earth. And whereas the king saw a holy watcher coming down from heaven and saying, Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the ground with a band of iron and bronze. We see that again. You know what? Let's get another precept. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 26, verse 19. Sorry, I didn't mean to say Leviticus chapter 26, verse 19. I meant to say Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 23. All right, Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 23, and it says, Your heavens over your head will be copper, nakashat, and the land beneath you will be iron. So it's pretty much saying the exact same thing, but in reverse. To reiterate what it really means when your heavens are like copper, and the earth will be like iron. You cannot grow anything from iron or copper. And looking up, we don't want to see iron or copper above our heads. That would be like the terror dome or something like that. So I just wanted to reiterate that, because the scriptures do reiterate that in the explanation or interpretation of the dream. So it says, let me start back at 23. It says, And whereas the king saw a holy watcher coming down from heaven and saying, Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the ground with a band of iron and bronze in the grass of the field, and let him be bathed with the dew of heaven, and let his lot be with the animals of the field, until 7 times pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and it is a decree of the Most High, that has come upon my lord the king. You shall be driven away from human society, and your dwelling shall be with the wild animals. You shall be made to eat grass like oxen. You shall be bathed with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you until you have learned that the Most High has sovereignty over the kingdom of mortals and gives it to whom he will, as it was commanded to leave the stump and roots of the tree. Your kingdom shall be reestablished for you for the time that you learn that heaven is sovereign. Therefore, O king, may my counsel be acceptable to you. Atone for your sins with righteousness, and with your iniquities with mercy, to the oppressed, so that your prosperity may be prolonged. Verse 28. All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, and the king said, "Is this not magnificent Babylon, which I have built as a royal capital by my mighty power and for my glorious majesty?" While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven. "O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is declared, the kingdom has departed from you. You shall be driven away from human society, and your dwelling shall be with the animals of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like oxen, and 7 times shall pass over you until you have learned that the Most High has sovereignty over the kingdom of mortals and gives it to whom he will." Immediately the sentence was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven away from human society, ate grass like oxen, and his body was bathed with the dew of heaven until his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails became like bird's claws. When that period was over, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me. I blessed the Most High and praised and honored the one who lives forever, for his sovereignty is an everlasting sovereignty, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does what he wills with the host of heaven. And the inhabitants of the earth, there is no one who could stay his hand, or say to him, "What are you doing?" At that time my reason returned to me, and my majesty and splendor was restored to me for a glory of my kingdom. My counselors and my lords sought me out. I was reestablished over my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol the King of heaven. Extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are truth, and his ways are justice, and he is able to bring low those who walk in pride. So there you have it. I mean, we have principles of the Torah within this situation with the iron and bronze, and we have a situation where King Nebuchadnezzar was the pinnacle of power in his empire, and he pretty much turns homeless for a period of 7 times. So there you have it, and it's to prove a point. And not only that, we also get a glimpse of what is to come after his empire. During this period, he was prospering. He lost his mind, and then snapped out of it again, and he was added more. His prosperity was added more onto him, and that was the Most High proving a point where he can bring you up, he can bring you down, and And this is still the situation where King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon was to put Israel into captivity. And this is just another example of who's really in charge. Okay, well, that was part 2. Part 3 is coming up shortly. Shalom.